All right. Well, earlier today, I had a great conversation with AJ. If you didn't see that, we'll put a card up at the end on that one. AJ, one of the first things I wanted to ask him is how did he miss so badly? Larry, AJ missed it by a mile. You missed. Everybody was high. Almost everybody was high, except
Yep.
for the street, except for Wall Street. And AJ said, look, I have got the China numbers are exact. The European numbers are almost exact. The other shipments out of China, those are pretty much exact. I can get perfect numbers on all that stuff. The only imperfect numbers are the US numbers. And he says, so it's the misses in the United States. He says the main thing would be S and X. And I said, oh, okay, those were both down. And I said, what about the Y? We don't have specific on Y. And I brought up my Osborning issue again, Larry. And I thought I'd convinced you of this last time.
Well, I don't buy it in whole. I don't actually see how a car at $100,000 is going to Osborne a car at
That
$50,000.
isn't the point. All right, let me I'll make my argument.
All right.
Most new car purchases in the 40,000 and above category are not because the old car is being towed to the junkyard. These people that are buying a $40,000 car it's a discretionary purchase. It's likely due to either an impulse, they want a new toy, maybe they have a specific need, or they just get a new car every 3 years or every 5 years or
Yeah.
something like that, right? Okay, the people on the waiting list for the Cybertruck, not the ones that are getting the Foundation series now, the ones that are on the waiting list for next year or the following year are overwhelmingly not truck drivers, just like those who've already taken delivery are not truck drivers. They're making a fun purchase of a vehicle that will fit their needs, just getting around town or whatever, but that is largely a status situation, not a functional decision.
Then
And
those are not the guys who are driving a Y.
But the guys who are on the list for the Cybertruck, if there was no such thing as a Cybertruck, would need to make a purchase of some kind of a vehicle because it's time.
I don't disagree with you. I
Okay,
just don't think they would be buying a Y.
what would they be
Their
buying?
wife would buy a Y. They'd be buying an S or an X.
Oh, well, no, I'm talking about the person like me that's waiting for the $60,000 vehicle. We're waiting for the 60. We're not going to buy an 80 or $100,000
Do you
vehicle.
think that the Y purchases are people holding off buying because they're going to buy a Cybertruck in some future year?
Whenever the price gets down, they'll go through the list as many times. They got 2 million, right, that are on the list. And most of those people are not going to buy an $80,000 vehicle, even though they've lowered the price today. They're going to be like us. They're waiting for that $60,000 price point so they can get the discount off from the government, et cetera. That's who I'm looking at as the Model Y buyer, or Model 3. It could have been either one. Could be a Rivian buyer. Rivian could make the same argument. In fact, I saw people making that argument today.
I'm absolutely sure. I'm absolutely sure that we cost Rivian sales this
Right,
quarter
right.
because that truck is so superior in so many respects to the Rivian.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to some people's taste, and the Rivian is to those people's taste. And then there's the political animus against
Right, right.
Elon, which would drive people to Rivian, so they wouldn't even look at the Cybertruck. But other than that, I think that if you're going to look at a Rivian or a Cybertruck, you're going to end up buying a Cybertruck.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm saying if even 50,000 people decided this year not to buy a Model Y because they're waiting for their Cybertruck, that's a lot of folks out of the 2 million on the list. And why does it matter, Larry? It matters because of the impact on the fourth quarter. Because I think that when we get to the Juniper, some of those Model Y people see that new Juniper. I mean, people that are waiting for their Cybertruck see that new Juniper, and they might be, oh, you know what? I'm going to get that.
But you're making an assumption about when the Juniper's coming out, and I've seen a lot of those assumptions. I'm not on board with any of them.
Oh, when do you think it's coming out?
I don't know. I don't know that it is coming out. I don't know where their head is on that subject.
Yeah.
They've not they've not they've not even given us a peep on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Well,
haven't seen, we haven't seen any test cars trundling around. We haven't, none of the usual signs are being, bruited about. So I don't think it's there.
okay. I'll have to ask Brian that on Monday, see what he thinks about if he's heard anything more about the Juniper
Well,
in
you
terms.
hear a lot of stuff on, you read a lot of stuff
Right.
on X, but I haven't seen a single photograph that is a legitimate juniper under test. And normally we see these things 3 months or 5 months before
Yeah.
the product is on sale. And so I haven't seen any sign of it.
Yeah. So if there is no Juniper, then my feeling would be that we would continue to see this impact on Y going forward because it's just it's ready. It needs those updates. And people can get a 3 instead of a Y, or they can just wait for their Cybertruck.
No, yeah, people who are going to buy a Y are not going to buy a 3 instead. They
Yeah,
see themselves as needing that form factor.
yeah. It may, or well, again, I think a lot of times it's just looks. My wife and I have exactly the same kind of needs. She's a Model Y person, I'm a Model 3 person. You know, and if we only have one car, of course, she wins.
I get that. Yeah, I certainly understand that. In the meantime, we're a two-person household. We have 3 cars.
Right, yes, yes. Well, we had to, and I just decided I didn't need it. There was just it didn't make any sense at all to have
No, I don't know. I've got to sell my X. If there's anybody out there who needs a model, 2022 Model X refreshed with a, AI4 chip computer in outstanding condition, please, DM me.
There you go. Good. Well, we managed to claw back all of yesterday's losses, Larry, in one single day. And while the market was up a little bit, it was really all Tesla. It was really just
Yeah, there was some good news this morning though, and it's been such a long day with this stuff going on in the mountains that I didn't pay attention today.
well, we'll come back to your mountain story in a few minutes because you've got a good one there. But I found this particularly interesting today from Rains. I guess I've been following him all along, but I haven't noticed a lot of his things until today. And I guess you know him, Rains 1220, and he does a lot of the statistical analysis of the FSD.
Yep.
He says if we look at current types of causations for critical disengagements in FSD 12.5 dot whatever, we see 1, traffic control, that would be intersections and whatnot,
Right.
2, obstacles, and 3, emergency vehicles. He says if you look at 25,000 miles recorded so far for FSD 12.5 by X, whatever number, in the community tracker, there are only 2 critical disengagements caused by other reasons than those 3. And those other reasons would be just miscellaneous. While in FSD 12.3.6, we had 8 other kinds. So if we use interventions per 10,000 city miles as a metric, then you would say maybe they've knocked out a lot of these others, and that's what they've been working on, is trying to get down to these 3 where they can really concentrate.
I'm absolutely aligned with him. I did read that, and I'm aligned with him because, I read these guys who say, "Oh, I had an intervention within 1 mile." Look, I've driven 12.5 now quite a lot, actually a very lot. And I do understand where it's at on the freeways. It's actually, there's some regressions on the freeways. There is a specific issue around speed, and it's clearly been made to be very, very slow. It's definitely, they're being very cautious. But other than that, most of the serious issues are gone. There remains the issue of signage, road markings, signage, and flashing lights. And flashing lights encompass emergency services.
Right.
Those are the three, I think, big issues. The others, honestly, a lot of people are complaining about lanes.
Mhm.
My argument is that most of the lane issues are not critical.
Mhm.
Many of the lane issues are our own impatience, or sometimes they are, like I've had to adjust lanes. I've had to intervene to adjust lanes. There's one particular exit, we've talked about it already. You call it the Pasadena freeway-like exit.
Yes, yes.
It didn't take that exit, and I haven't been, even when the stack got integrated. Interestingly enough, it took that exit. It made it no
Right.
problem.
Nice.
The bigger problem is bad lane selection led it to exit before that exit
Ah,
in the wrong exit, and I've had to intervene with that. So, there are those remaining lane issues, but the three items that I talked about are the serious ones, because the lane issue is something that solves itself, but it's either uncomfortable or it's inefficient because you have to go around the block once or twice.
right.
So, which by the way, Waymo does right now.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I think when we talk about, safety interventions,
Mhm.
I can see that this version has come down by a big slug. I don't know what the actual numbers are, and I'm not sure we've had anywhere near enough
Yeah.
miles to actually make any determination.
So Elon has said that he thinks that we're not very far from where it will be one intervention every 10,000. Now, he didn't give a date, but I can begin to see, as you just said, and as this commenter said, that if you knock out these others, you've got, a spattering of others, and you just get those off
Yeah.
the table, and you're down to basically three, then you can start to do almost what they do with Chuck Smith's corner. You could say, okay, we're just gonna work on this until we've got it, and then we'll work on this until we've got it. So you kind of
Yeah, one of the interesting things about this particular stack that they're now using is that they need a huge number of examples of how to do it, not what not to do.
right.
And so it becomes a lot more difficult to knock out the corner cases because you have to knock out that corner case.
Right, right.
And that's why they need a lot of drivers. But I think Elon's confidence lies in the fact that they're able to train so rapidly. I mean, look at how much they knocked out in the last month.
Yes.
And they projected that they were going to knock it out. Now, unless they had already knocked it out and they were just releasing it, it's quite possible, by the way, that they had a lot of backlog in their test cycles. But my sense is that they feel very confident of rapid turnaround, and so it's quite possible that they tackle one particular corner case at a time,
Mhm.
just focus on that one. And then the problem is the lane thing is a lot of cases. It's not one case. There are so many, variations on the theme. It's incredible. But
Yeah,
after a while, after you train them on train this on a lot of good things, it develops its own instincts,
right.
which is quite remarkable at how instinctive it's become. I think that's the exciting part of what I've learned from 12X is that it has an instinct.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that, is a quantum leap from where it was before, where they had to programmatically, compensate. And then when they compensate, they, have to look at all the other things that they're they're compromising, and how much do they adjust that? So all of that goes away. And so let's see how well its instinct, develops for it. Look, there's a non-zero chance that they can't make it happen. But
Never. Well,
well,
I think it becomes a case of whether I've all my comment, good enough. I think Waymo right now, to your point, Waymo is only good enough. I mean,
yeah,
they had a stall the other day that got in the way of Kamala Harris's.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, so it's only good enough. It is not perfect, and I don't think it's going to be. It could be years before the Tesla or the Waymo version would be perfect. But if it's good enough,
Yeah.
substitute that, I think is the goal.
But one thing I'm certain of is that as they reach feature complete, this product has become ideal for trips and for driving. Even if it's supervised, it's a fantastic addition to the car. Whether it's worth 8,000 or 12,000 or 15,000 or 5,000, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But a couple of $100 a month, I'm pretty sure, a lot of people will pay that.
Yeah. No, I can remember when the first speed, what do you call the darn thing? Where you set the speed and I forget the name.
Cruise control.
Cruise control. I remember when cruise control first came out, I was doing lots of trips back and forth to San Francisco and back and forth to Phoenix, which were the two major markets,
Yeah.
and San Diego, but a shorter trip. And boy, when that cruise control came out, the difference in the way you arrived at the end of that trip was just night and day when you put
Yeah.
that on.
Yeah.
So the doing so much more, getting it almost to the point of being a chauffeur certainly helps the nerves. Yeah,
Sorry about that. I normally have my phone turned off. I don't know why it's on today.
no big deal. So Larry, I'm sure that this will be a major part of what we talk about tomorrow. I want to remind people to tune in around 11 California time tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what Cathie Wood has to say. But boy,
But boy, wow. I mean, that's no recession number.
but do you believe the numbers? I think they're completely fishy.
It's no recession number, that's for sure.
It's not a recession number,
I
but
mean, here's the thing.
yeah,
Here's the thing about it. Even though it may be an unbelievable number and may be wrong, I didn't say it's wrong, it may be wrong. Just bringing it out spurs an enormous amount of economic activity,
right.
which may drive us out of recession.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about this.
it's all right. It's not a problem. So, but Larry, the numbers, I mean, there's no predicate for it at all. In fact, all the other stats were showing flat hiring or down hiring, whether it was the Chicago report, the New York report, the Philadelphia, all the reports, the Beige Book. The Fed chairman himself last week said hiring was soft, it was flat. So there was no predicate for these numbers. And we haven't had a situation all this year, I don't think, with a massive number with increases in the prior two periods. I mean, to me, it seemed like a nonsense number.
Well, it's either a nonsense number or it's an indication that this 50 point, drop in the interest rates a very big spur. I mean, the news only came out a week ago, right?
Yes.
So it's hardly likely that in 1 week all of that
No.
took place, right?
And then the payroll, the hourly wages were up 4.4%, which is the same number, roughly the same number as ADP said. So those numbers at least were in agreement.
Probably, yeah.
But that was with fewer hours. So they're cutting hours and they're also raising pay. So that
Well, a lot turns on what happens with GDP. If GDP shows an upward curve with that reduced hours and even with the increased pay, that's pretty bullish then.
Yeah, although the Fed, not that they get the GDP right ever, they lowered their GDP estimate from 3% to 2.5%. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's just, and then the other thing was that the biggest gainer was travel and restaurants and stuff like that in September, when you would expect travel and restaurants to be laying off, not adding to.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. Yeah, they're adding in total numbers, not in seasonal.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, but the final thing on this, Larry, is if the Fed just cut 50 basis points based on what? Based on worry about the labor numbers and believing they had inflation in check. And now they get this report that says labor is fine, but inflation is potentially a problem. Does that mean we don't get a cut on November 7th?
It's possible, but they don't change their momentum from meeting to meeting. This last change was like, turning a giant oil tanker around.
Yep.
They signaled it, but they didn't do it. They signaled it, but they didn't do it. They signaled that really it was going to come this time, and then it came. And so I don't think they're going to change direction. Now, what they may do is not add another quarter point.
Yeah. That's my point, is they might just leave it for that period, Because,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the jobs numbers next month come the day after the Fed meeting. So they won't
Yeah,
even
but they'll have an insight. That last time they had an insight as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really, the whole thing was just such a shock this morning. And of course, the stock market seemed to love it, but the bond market went
Well,
up 12 basis points.
points, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, but that makes sense.
Well, that would suggest that the bond market is maybe taking that quarter point cut off the table. It would also suggest the bond market thinks that the inflation rate is more like 2.5 to 3, not 2.5 to 2.0. That's what it would reflect.
Yeah. Everybody's confused.
It's been that kind of year. So it's kind of interesting. We're now almost at 4% again. That's only 100 basis points lower than the high when inflation was at 8%, 9%.
But I wonder where the money market funds are right now. I can look that up.
Go ahead, take a quick look for that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting, the money market funds are almost a better bellwether than the treasuries right now.
Mm.
It shows you what they're actually paying in reality.
Right.
Let me see what it says.
Sure.
So I'm using snacks. That's Schwab's Value Advantage Money Ultra Shares. That's what they give you if you put, quite a lot of money there.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. I know it fell from 5. We were at 1.5.2, 5.4, 4.9. It's actually up a basis point.
Okay. All right. Okay. So
It's 4.89 when I read it last time.
got it. All right. Well, it's a very interesting issue now, and I'm sure that it will create a tremendous amount of consternation and debate over the next 4 weeks before we get to the next Fed meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to keep all the money on the side, continue to keep all the money on the side. I mean, when you think about the amount of money that's in money market funds just sitting on the side,
Yeah.
and it's the government that's depleted of cash.
So we'll have a very interesting week that week, Larry. We'll have the election on the 5th. We'll have the Fed decision on the 7th, and we'll have the jobs number.
I guarantee you we won't have a result on the election by the time the Fed.
Oh, okay. All right. That's it. 2 days. 2 days later.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very close election. That's where it's heading right now. And in these very close elections, it's going to become very difficult. I mean, the only advantage is that, ironically, they've got so much pre-day voting now that maybe there's not a cliffhanger. Maybe we have the results,
Yeah.
complete.
Yeah.
But, if Trump loses, he is not going to lose with grace. I will tell you that.
What would cause you to say such a thing, Larry?
I have no evidence for it. It's just a suspicion.
Just a thought. Just came to your mind.
But what's interesting is what happens if the Democrats lose?
Yeah.
Because when they lost in 2016, they blamed it on the Russians.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a long burn. It wasn't like Trump. They didn't. He fulminated immediately. But with the Democrats, it's a long burn, And so Trump goes crazy and he gets people very riled up, and they got over riled up.
Yes.
Overriled. But with the Democrats, it's a long, slow burn. They had to invent this Russian thing, and so both parties are so sick right now.
Yeah. Well, if you remember in 2016, they immediately came up with this idea of the resistance. This the very thing that they had claimed that the Republicans were doing to them when they were in the White House.
You know what? I don't care about it. I'm old enough that I don't give a continental. I really don't.
But what you do care about is that you have some reporting on this FEMA business today.
Oh my God, it's such a mess.
So we have
It is such a mess up in the mountains. Look, people are in dire straits in the mountains of North Carolina. I'm sure in Tennessee and I'm sure in Georgia. But I know people in the mountains. My brother lived on the top of a mountain for years. He only came down 2.5 years ago. And, thank God he did, because he sold his house, got a huge price for the house. That house is unsaleable today. In fact, it's going to cost a whole lot of money to repair it. Never mind sell it. And you can't sell it because that entire development is, it's falling down the mountain. They haven't got water. But everybody in the mountains are in dire straits. And a whole lot of people, certainly from this area and everywhere in North Carolina and everywhere, I'm sure, in Virginia, people close to people in the mountains are rushing to help.
Yeah.
Except FEMA.
Right.
They came along like the second or the third day. People were dying.
Over 200.
We have terrible stories that I don't want to even repeat because people say it's impossible.
Right.
Oh, that's what happened today. Elon said, FEMA are stopping people from delivering,
Starlinks.
Starlink terminals. They're saying, you can't do it. We've got to do it. You got to give it to us. And of course, they sit in a warehouse because FEMA doesn't have people.
Right.
They can't get organized. I told a terrible story of a neighbor of mine who owns a helicopter. He's a very, very astute and experienced pilot. He immediately took his helicopter in there, landed in a village, in a town that had been wiped out. There was a very distressed elderly couple. He took the wife and her stuff, and he took her out, I guess, to Asheville. I don't even know whether it was Asheville. Came back to fetch the husband. The fire chief comes rushing down there and tells him to get his helicopter out of there. Will not allow him to load the guy up into the helicopter and says that he'll arrest him unless he leaves. Now, there's no NOTAM. There's no, I get all this people who know all this stuff telling me, well, you can't fly in the air because there's, air traffic. Bull.
Baloney.
Baloney. Absolute baloney. I know my family's been flying for, 50 years. I mean, there was no NOTAM. There was no air traffic control.
Right.
Operational.
Right.
This fire chief threatens to arrest the guy. Another guy says to me, "Oh, fire chief can't arrest." Oh, yes, a fire chief can arrest you. And anyway, this fire chief apparently lost his job over this whole problem. But the guy had to leave the husband, the distressed
Right.
husband, behind and fly off.
Yeah.
Well, since then, he's been flying backwards and forwards. He's done, I don't know how many trips now. I don't know how many Starlinks we've delivered up there. I don't know how many thousands of tons of stuff we've taken up there. But people are still in dire distress. And, we'll arrive in a village and people will say, oh, you can't give it, we've got to give it out.
Yeah.
And it's not only FEMA,
Yeah.
it's every bloody official and his mother. It's very distressing.
That didn't happen with that massive the New Orleans and all the south coast of Louisiana stuff. I know lots of people that were going down there with truckloads of stuff, and they were able to deliver it. They were able to help people in distress. They were able to get to people.
I've never heard of this thing of FEMA has to have, whatever authority, and I've never heard of anything like this. Government has become so frigging authoritative. And it's nothing to do with Democrats, it's got nothing to do with Republicans. It's just this administrative state that we've become. We were never like this.
Yeah, yeah. Makes no sense. Well,
the fire chief, if the fire chief got help from a citizen, the fire chief was always very gracious.
yeah, yeah.
And, he would say, you guys can go there, do this, keep clear of that, blah, blah, blah. But to actually officially kick a guy out in a helicopter when he's already, but and Elon's guy reported
Right.
how, FEMA were blocking him or officials were blocking. I don't know. It was just sick.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I do hear from people saying that they've been helped by the authorities, that they, when they brought the first Starlinks in, some of the policemen actually helped distribute them. In the first, I think it was second day. Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very, very crazy situation. Larry, anything else on the Tesla front or on the economic front that's interesting to you right now?
Oh, I've had such a busy
I
day.
know.
I will tell you that I think venture capital is kind of getting a little bit more active.
Wow.
I've been very active. I've been in several deals this year. It's counterintuitive, but I think it's a good time because, comps are down dramatically, so valuations are down. I think people are a little bit more realistic. But, there's this huge problem, and they discussed it at length on the All In podcast. There's this huge problem of no exits.
Right.
Ultimately, whoever buys you, when you're a small VC, whoever buys you out has to be able to exit themselves into the public markets or whatever. And it's just not happening.
But there's no IPOs at all. It's just like the lowest number of IPOs in history, the lowest number of corporations actually existing. They were having trouble finding 2,000 corporations to put in the Russell 2000.
Well, I believe that will open up a little bit now.
Well, Elon says it's because of your favorite subject, overregulation, that it's just so hard to be a public corporation now. All of the stuff that the government imposes on you and the markets, but mostly the government imposes.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's entirely right. This SEC has been a lot tougher than any previous SEC, certainly on crypto. Well, not many SECs have had to face crypto in the past.
Right.
But they've taken a pretty hard line on crypto, but they've taken a hard line on a lot of stuff. And so my sense is that, but SEC's never been an easy partner for public companies. So I don't think it's the SEC is the sole reason. I think it's one of the reasons. But I think that what happened in the ZIRP times, there was so much money that private equity could put into these things that the money didn't cost them any money, so it didn't matter to them how much it was tied up. Anyway, for a whole host of reasons, it's been pretty bad.
Yeah. That's what I've heard a lot. I've never been in a position to be that investor. I've looked for an angel one time, but I've never been on the other side of it. Larry, the stock market ended up 300. I lost track, and you said you weren't paying attention. The Dow ended up 341 to the positive. At the end of the day, it took off, and I must have been distracted because I didn't notice that. NASDAQ ended up 219 and the S&P up 51. And as we talked about, Tesla was up 942. It's down a few pennies in the after hours. But that is roughly 1% hit.
So if you take today as the kind of settle down day, it's the Friday after the deliveries, and so options have, the options have closed.
Right.
It now looks like the market was unfazed by the delivery numbers. 10 points, 8 to 10 points. That was the price of the so-called miss.
Right.
Herbert said it wasn't a miss. It was either a 300 vehicle miss or it was not a miss at all. Now the question is, now we will be able to see what 1010 really represents, because this is the baseline for 1010. So that'll be interesting.
We're still going to go, Larry. We're now within shooting point of my number. We got 4 days to get to 365, 265. 265. I think it's a slam dunk.
I don't think we'll get there. We'll see.
We'll get to 265. Okay. All right. Well, that's why there's difference of opinion, right?
Are you saying 265 by 1010, or are you saying before 1010?
On 1010. So people
on 1010.
People will still be playing it on 1010. Now they might take some of the froth off on 1010, and we might come back down again before the end of the day. But I'm just saying we'll hit 265, 10.9, 10.10, and maybe it'll subtract a little before the end.
You could be right.
We're
Could be wrong. I don't think it matters.
No, it doesn't. It's just fun.
Okay.
It's fun.
Okay.
The question becomes what happens after, but we've done that to death. You and I have talked about that 15 times.
Well, hopefully Cathie would. All right, so we've got some numbers to look at.
Well, okay. So we got the 10-year up 12. We've got the 2-year up 21 basis points. 21 basis points. Did I read that right? We're almost back. We're almost back to inverting again.
It's incredible.
Yeah. The 3-month and the 2-month were not they were 12 also. The 2-month 12 and the 3-month was only 5. But the 2-year up 21 basis points. Just crazy. So be interesting to see. Monday, we might see some of that. We might see some rebounding from those numbers, because that's a pretty heavy dose of reaction. Oil continues up, I think. Pretty sure. Let me see here. Well, yep, another 74 cents. We're now at 74.45 for Texas, 78.05 for Brent, but natural gas down 4.68%. 2.831 is where that's sitting now after almost getting to 3, but not quite. So maybe that's one of those cases of where it finally got, too stretched and people took it off the table. Gold down 6, but sitting at 2673. That is turning out to be that 2675 is turning out to be
right. It's on a ledge.
Yep, it's on a ledge.
The question is, does it fall off the ledge or does it climb higher?
Silver down a little bit, but still staying strong at 32.5. And copper up 0.32, also staying strong at 456. And the dollar up against the yen, unchanged against the euro. And crypto crept up. 1,400 a day, up sitting at 62,329. So, of course,
Well, by the way, I gave you the wrong number.
Oh,
Snacks returned 5.49% in the last year. 5.49 for a money market fund.
5.49. That's a good deal.
You made more money in the money market than if you held Tesla shares.
At least today. Last week you might have been, no, see, last
No,
week,
yeah, I'm saying in a year's
in a year's time.
over a
Okay.
year period.
I was gonna say year to date, they were finally in the green. I forget where it passed the green, somewhere around
Yeah,
260.
but we're like 1 or 2% up for a year so far. Maybe more, maybe a little bit more now, but not much.
If we get the right stuff on 1010, Larry, we might be at 300.
Or 150.
I said the right stuff, Larry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm hoping you'll have a great weekend. I hope that none of your close friends or others. We've had a couple of my
Oh,
hosts.
by the way,
Couple of my
one thing we should talk about for a minute. You saw the guy who went from British Columbia, I think it was, who went from $4,440 to $419 million to zero, playing Tesla stock on margin. Yeah, this is a true story. He's suing the bank.
Suing the bank.
Yeah, because they assigned a special advisor to him, and the special advisor let him have all this margin, and he drove the stock up to $419 million from 4,000, I think it was $4,000. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Was he?
Now I have friends who lost tens of millions of dollars. In fact, some friends who actually had to go back and get a job
Oh wow.
on Tesla stock because they bought it on margin.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah.
But nobody I know lost $419 million.
$1 million. That's a crazy story. Well, I don't give financial advice, but don't buy stocks on margin. And if you're going to play leaps and options, play with money you can afford to lose. It's just
I don't give investment advice, but I do give life advice.
there you
And
go.
the life advice I give is do not touch margin
Right,
ever.
right.
Because when you start that stuff, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
And like any drug, you don't know how to control it. It is the worst thing in the world.
I understand. I get it.
I'll tell you a story. I had a friend who was deep into Tesla stock, tens of millions of dollars. And he told me he had X amount of margin. I said to him, look, whatever you do, get out of the margin. I gave him the whole song and dance. And he said, I'm going to do that. The very next time I saw him, he was out looking for a job.
Oh, oh, ouch.
That's a true story.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Tens of millions. Now, he kept some of it. He bought a house,
Yeah, yeah.
and that kind of stuff. But he's back at work.
Yep. There is a story. There's plenty of stories in the financial world.
Terrible.
Larry,
Terrible.
I gotta wrap it today.
Yep.
I'm the guy who has to get out today. So
Well,
I remind people to go take a look at that AJ video from earlier today. It was a stunner. It was
and I'm going to go and watch it because I can learn from AJ. Everything he does is like a lesson. He's fantastic. I love him.
okay. All right. So Larry, thank you so much as always. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.